Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. It's so good to be back into the studio for the iNetrepreneur Network. I am Robert Jones. I am the owner, founder of the iNetrepreneur Network, and this is our iNetrepreneur Radio Show. And I'm glad that you're here with us today on the 13th of January, 2022. We take a little bit of time off to kind of celebrate some holidays, kind of regroup, retool, and you know what? Get on with it. And so this is it, our first show of the year. And I'm really excited about our show today because I have an amazing celebrity personality who creates a tremendous amount of impact in each and everyone's lives. So I will save that for a little bit. I want to get some business out there. Art of Connection, the Art of Connection book premiere will be Thursday, January 27th, starting at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can get more information by going to our calendar, ntevents.net. That's ntevents.net. Be sure to reserve your place so you can see this wonderful book premiere. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. I also want to talk about our summit. Before we're going to have the summit on January 27th, but it's ending up to being so big, we actually had to separate the book premiere and launch from the summit itself. So our Art of Connection Summit, you know, you can go to artofconnectionsummit.com to get more information. It's going to be on Thursday, March 31st. It's going to start at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I know some people, they talk to me all the time about the time zones, and they say, well, sometimes it's PST and sometimes it's AST, and it's because we live in this great state of Arizona where the iNetrepreneur Network is, and we don't change our time with daylight savings time. So that's why sometimes it's a PST for 6 months of the year or so, and MST for the other 6 months of the year. Lastly, I want to make sure that everyone, learns a little bit more about what ntevents.net is. That is our master calendar where you can find over 1,000 meetings and events per year. 1,000 meetings and events per year for entrepreneurs, business owners, influencers, experts, founders, coaches, consultants, authors, etc. We all come together and for the purpose of connecting, and finding if we have referrals to both give each other. We also learn there. I mean, there's education in each and every one of our meetings. We also have a small mastermind at the end. So each and every meeting, you can find something special. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/iNetrepreneur Radio. So again, I'm really excited with who we have here today. I mean, this gentleman, his name is Mr. Jeffrey Morris of the DreamSmart Academy out of San Diego, California. And Jeffrey, I'm so excited for you to be here today. I mean, you're a master trainer, you're an executive coach, you're a DEI expert. You're a Marine, my friend, a Marine as well. I mean, that right there says it all. I mean, improvise, overcome, and adapt. I mean, it doesn't get any better in my book than that. A veteran just like myself. I'm so happy to share today's airways with Jeff Morris, the CEO and founder of the DreamSmart Academy. Well, welcome, Jeff. How are you doing?
Robert, number one, let me say I'm honored to be on the radio show. Happened very quickly, being a Marine. First, let's say simplify to each other as we always do, always faithful to each other. And thank you for your service to our country. And thank you to all the veterans and this iNetrepreneur Network today and in the future. So excited to be on the show. Can't wait to have more conversation with you, Robert, here.
I am as well. I always look at my Marine Corps career, and I served for 6 years myself, Jeffrey. And what is so funny is I remember being in the Marines, and how often I thought to myself, what did I do? What am I doing in the Marine Corps? I mean, this is tough stuff. I served the first 3 years as a field infantry communications, and the second 3 years I did comm center operations. And so I said, only in the Marines could you go from being a frocker to a seacocker. I mean, I mean, what? I mean, what a crazy
Right.
place that is. But I was honored enough to be able to be a part of the team that was in Panama when we were turning the Panama Canal over to the Panamanians. It,
Wow.
it helped me grow up really quickly, Jeffrey. And I look back on that time frame, and sometimes I thought it was like the worst times of my life. But then you look back and you think to yourself, these really are the best times of my life, because it sets a foundation that you cannot replace. That there is nothing like being a Marine. And I say this so much of the time, and you may say it too. I can tell you what it's like being a Marine, but only a Marine can tell another Marine what it's like to be a Marine, right?
Absolutely, my friend. Much like you, Robert, I know we're going to talk about some other things, but as a young man, it set me up as a foundation, set a foundation for really the young man that I am today, getting to experience some of the leadership that I was exposed to, being able to travel the world at a young age. 6 months out of high school, I found myself in Puerto Rico. Imagine being in a whole different country for 2 years. I got to see Antigua Bay. I got to see Vieques. I got to see a bunch of places around the world just from being in Puerto Rico, and then being able to travel. Once I came back to the mainland, I saw Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, Asia. I saw so many places, and it gave me a great appreciation for much of what I do today around diversity and inclusion and equity. So that was all set up as a young Marine. Um, Fantastic experience for me. I served from 1986 to 1992, and I wouldn't change any part of my experience as a young Marine.
No, absolutely not. And I think that that's the wonderful thing about it. I mean, there were several things that I learned about it, and I'm telling you, when you talk about team, that there's nothing better that describes the epitome of what a team is than when it's a Marine. Having so many having, and that's where I got my phrase, Jeffrey. I say, through our diversity, we can learn from each other, but it's through our unity is where
Mm,
we can grow with each other. And that really
yeah,
is how what set the foundation and tone for my life, is to be a part of something bigger, to be a part of people who I might not have cared for otherwise. If I met them out in the general public, and then all of a sudden I am there relying on people, and all of a sudden these people, all of a sudden I've changed, and so have they. And all of a sudden, these people who I thought I didn't like became some of my best friends, and not just best friends, but lifelong friends. And I think that that's what you and I learned from that is, can we be brainwashed? And I'm saying this in the best of all possible ways. Absolutely, we can. We can change, can't we?
absolutely. The Marine Corps is, in my opinion, one of the most diverse corporations in the world, right? The military service, period. Given the types of people that come in to our military from all walks of life, from all cultures, from all religious beliefs, genders, and everything that goes along with that, and having to accomplish the mission. Because one thing that we used to say was bullets don't know no colors, right? And so you have to depend on the person to the left or to the right of you, whether they look like you or didn't look like you, whether they believe like you or didn't believe like you. The most important thing was to get back home and to
Yep.
train successfully for the mission. So as I said, it set the foundation for a lot of the work that I do today. So, and Marine to Marine, when you and I had our first conversation, it, it was like we were old buddies because we
Yeah.
shared a common experience of being in that small fraternity of the Marine Corps. It was an instant connection with us. I felt that. Did you feel that as well?
I felt it automatically. I couldn't believe how within a few moments, I mean, and really it was a few moments, I felt like I was talking to a best friend from childhood. And,
Absolutely.
you know, and I'm pretty fortunate because I'm very accepting, and I'm open. authentic, and I facilitate a lot of relationships. And we might talk a little bit about my behavioral type, being a facilitator, but really, that there's also that it comes natural to me, but there was some sense of depth of being able to talk with you, Jeffrey, that I don't get otherwise. And sometimes I think you have to, they say, to be the man, you have to do what the man does, type of thing. And we could just, I'm just using it like as an example, but what that it is like. And I think that there's a sense of an entrainment and attraction that is developed within our heart and our soul that allows us to, kind of commit to each other, in a very holistic nature that we might not have otherwise.
It's a common experience, and for those that have fought or wore the colors and were prepared to fight, there's a special flavor of life that we have, and there's a kindred spirit that we all have for each other, that is hard to explain, to those who maybe not have served or maybe not had a positive experience in the service. So I'm thankful for that, my friend, and looking forward to continuing to grow our relationship and our connection, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all starts somewhere, doesn't it? I mean, I started in a place called Kansas City, Kansas. I was only
Mm.
there for a blip of time, and raised, for 7 years with a dad and a mom, and then all of a sudden it was a single mom and just me. And I know that you have a story as well. Tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
your story. Where were you born and what were your parents like? And, what were some of the, thoughts and beliefs that you might have had at an early age? I mean, they could change, but what kind of set the framework for who you are in your early years?
Well, certainly, as we've all talked about, is our childhood has a lot to do with what we become and who we become. So I'm the parents of George Morris and Annie Jean Morris. They were raised in South Carolina. My grandparents were sharecroppers in South Carolina. I would go back to their farm during the summertime to learn how to pick watermelons and shell peas and butter beans. But my parents moved from the South in the early 70s, like a lot of Black families or African American families did. They migrated from the South to the North because there was a sense of more equality there, jobs that could pay better than farming could. So I was raised in Washington, D.C. in the early 70s. And, for those that are familiar with D.C., it's, at the time was primarily a African-American community or Black community, right? And so in the early to mid 70s, I left. My dad and my mom had a vision of us to have equality with people who were not like us, who were not Black. We wanted equality for everybody. So my dad's vision was, hey, he moved us to a little town called Waldorf, Maryland. And there I met for the first time someone that was white. And it was my first experience with having a relationship with someone who did not look like me. And what we really quickly found out was people were just people. Having to grow up in an all white community from the age of 7 or 8 until I left home, it was something that I had to navigate as a young African American man, learning how to live in a predominantly Caucasian society, and still maintain my Black identity. I was the only Black on my street for more than 10 years. But it was such a powerful experience for me because you got to understand that people are just people. And many of us want the same things. We want an education for our children. We want a nice car to drive or a nice house to drive. And that's not, segmented by race or color or gender or ethnicity. These are things that most in our human experience want to experience. So I thank my dad and my mom for giving me that experience, early in my life.
Yeah, and you said something earlier which resonates with me as well. And you said, like, being Marines, the bullet knows no color.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, when we were Marines, we say everyone's green if you're a Marine, but in the same way,
Mhm.
the color of money knows no color either, unless you say it's the color of green. And the other thing I could say like that is the marketplace knows no color either, because the
Mhm.
marketplace is there to serve in such a way to do commerce. That's to buy and
Mhm.
sell goods, to transact, to do some type of trade, whether it be through barter or money. And I think that that's what we're starting to understand incrementally, both here
Mhm.
in the United States and worldwide. And being a part of this kind of global, community and awareness, I think we're starting to move forward. But I also do think that, to have an action of that size, like it's like the ocean, 1 inch of water, to make the ocean raise 1 inch takes takes tremendous amount of energy, doesn't it? I mean, it
Absolutely.
really, really does, but I
Absolutely.
also think about when we're talking about the actions, I start thinking about our schools, and you and I talked about our backgrounds a little bit before about being in school. I was a product of busing. I was a product of being in a very interesting situation where in my world all the kids were blonde haired, blue eyed, and I was like the
Mm,
the exotic kid, and I didn't actually get to see African Americans in my world until I was bused into a new school. And quite frankly, it was the African American community, the kids in that school, that ended up embracing me so I could feel a part of. And
mm,
I it was really interesting to me because I felt, very young. It's like, would I ever fit in? Would I ever get to see the color of me? You know,
mm.
and fortunately, I learned it really isn't the color of me that mattered most. It was the character of me that mattered most.
Absolutely.
you know but I think sometimes, we're afraid to do that starting point. Sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's education, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's the color of skin, etc.
Mm.
But we all have to find, that place to start. But tell me a little bit about your schooling and finding your way through, especially because you were in a community that you kind of just had to land into because you were the kid.
Mhm. Right. So, as I said, we learned early on that, um, when there's difference, there can be friction, right? You notice that you're black and someone's white. But what we found out, especially as kids, is kids don't necessarily buy into the difference being noticed unless it's pointed out to them. Like, as I said, some of my best friends, when I was growing up, they were Caucasian. A Jerry Winger, fixed my bike chain for the first time. I'd never ridden a bike before. My chain broke. He came up to me and he's like, "Look, dude, I was nervous, Robert, because I'd never experienced anything with someone that was white." And he said, "Look, man, I'm not going to rob you. I'm just going to help you fix your chain."
Mm. Yeah,
And he quickly
it's
became
really interesting that you say that, 'cause it's almost like, who's this cat coming up to me trying to help
right.
me? Wait a minute here.
And we quickly, became really good friends. And I thank his parents for, being courageous enough to welcome a black kid into their home, and then in the late to mid 70s, and never have it being mentioned. But growing up and eating at the dinner table, and Jerry would come to our house and he'd eat collard greens and the ribs, and we quickly found out that, difference doesn't matter unless it's pointed out. It doesn't have to be negative when it's different. It can be celebrated. So I grew up listening to Kiss and AC/DC and Rush and Ozzy Osbourne. And then in the mid 80s, the early 80s, the song The Rapper's Delight came out, right? And all the white kids are singing the Rapper's Delight song. And so we just realized that difference can be celebrated. It does not have to be divisive in any way, especially when we can celebrate that difference, that difference brings into all of our communities. So it just makes it better.
Yeah. And I'm sure you learned from those experiences, but there had to be that one day where you looked up and you looked out and you said, did you want to serve? Did you want to do something differently? What caused you to go from, your environment where you were in Maryland and said, I'm going to join the United States Marine Corps? What kind of brought about the impetus for you to say, what, I'm going to join the Corps?
Well, having very little introduction to the military, because in my immediate family, where I lived, there was no one involved in the military. But being that young man that was kind of already an entrepreneurial thinker, my dad was an entrepreneur. Even though he came from the South, Robert, my father, um, learned how to pour concrete. He had a skill. He developed a skill right? My dad worked 4 jobs. I remember him working at a car wash, at a furniture factory. I remember him trying to go to school at night to try to repair televisions, but by day, he was learning the skill of construction, and he mastered that skill. And that skill eventually is what landed him enough money to move to Maryland, away from Washington, D.C. And eventually he opened his own business, construction business. And he ran that business for more than 40 years. And he didn't know he was mentoring young men at the time, but almost all my cousins and all my friends learned how to pour concrete and learn how to work hard through my dad's business. So you said a little bit earlier that at least this is how I say it. Money is attracted to value. When you bring value to people, it doesn't know any color, right? So a diamond doesn't have to go, hey, I'm a diamond and I'm expensive. You just put a diamond out on the table and people see the value in the diamond. And that's what we want to teach people. But to answer your question, I was a forward-thinking entrepreneur. I said, man, I can retire in 20 years. That's what I'm going to do. There was no thought behind it other than, hey, I can retire in 20 years and do what I want to after that. Man, I went into to serve the country, and I had a great experience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Jeffrey, because your story and my story are very similar in that, and I know that you don't know that yet, but I joined the Marines as well. Didn't have a lot of family background in it, other than an uncle. I used to work for him as a cabinet maker, and but he would tell me stories about the military and what he learned from it, and that was really alluring to me because I felt like there were some skill sets that I could get from the military that I couldn't get any other way. And he says, you can go to school for many, many years, but the school of hard knocks, they may give you the tears and they may give you the fears, but they're going to, the school of hard knocks will also get you through the things that nothing else will, and that's the experience of knowledge. And I always loved that about my uncle. I am here with Jeffrey Morris. He's a master trainer, executive coach, and the owner and the founder of the DreamSmart Academy. I am so excited that he's here. He is a veteran like myself, and I just want to celebrate him for that. We're going to take a little bit of break. I'm going to get his information across the screen just really quickly here. Jeffrey, you and I got to talk a little bit about our background, and let's talk about some of the shared experiences in the next segment, that both of us have had in our lifetime that also has created a framework for us not to go backward with the way that we think and the way that we are emotionally, but really to kind of go forward because, you and I both have these dreams, of
Right.
setting a whole new standard of inclusion. And again, Jeffrey Morris, DreamSmart Academy. So excited that you're here today with us. And we'll see you.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
All right, I am here with Jeffrey Morris. He is the owner and founder of the DreamSmart Academy. I'm really excited that you're here today. Let me go ahead and put his information across the screen. If you are watching out there, certainly use our chat function. You can ask him any questions if you would like. I'd love for you guys to put something in there and be a part of this conversation with us. This isn't about just being a spectator. It's about getting onto the field and playing with us, isn't it, Jeffrey?
Absolutely, my friend. The more the merrier.
That is right. The more the merrier. I really want to talk about some sensitive things because I feel like so many times we kind of, a lot of people, we skirt the subject, but when it gets right down to it, we're all human. And we're bound to succeed. We're bound to fail, and we're bound to make judgments. And the judgments can be very simple to like a microaggression, or a lack of awareness, to having a bias or a prejudice, or even up to racism, that sometimes happens in our society and even business now, and I really wanted to talk because I found it really interesting. You sent me a white paper and it was talking about, kind of framing what I can't even say it, egocentrism is. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? And maybe some entrepreneurs, just by that definition, can become a little more self-aware of what that looks like, and maybe even how to manage that.
Sure. So, very simply put in layman's terms, egocentrism is just thinking that your way is the only way,
Hmm.
right? To keep it very simple. And sometimes because of the way that we are raised or our life experiences, we can at times think that our culture is the only culture that matters, right? Our belief or our thought or even our religion or our um, things like that can be the only way that is the right way. And I really quickly learned, as I said to you, as a young Marine, when I traveled to a Puerto Rico, a Malaysia, a Singapore, a Thailand, the Philippines, they all have cultures, customs, and traditions, and they all matter. And I got a chance to be welcomed by so many different cultures. I remember being in Singapore and people coming up to me, Robert, and touching my. Back then, I had some hair. I don't have much now, but back then I had a
Right.
6-inch flat top, and they would come up and touch my hair and go, "Can we take a picture with you?"
Hmm.
And quickly found out that the world is made up of many different customs, traditions, and ideologies. And the more open we can be to those things and not subject to egocentrism or even sociocentrism, thinking that your culture is the only culture or the only way to get things done or cultural beliefs, can just help mitigate some of the friction we see in our own families, in our own organizations, and in our world today, to be inclusive, right? Just means that, hey, you're aware of centrism, and sociocentrism as well, as I mentioned in the paper.
Well, and I think if you hold on to it too much, you do lose out on the innovation of all that is around you. And certain cultures were developed during their time frames, to subsist better. And I think that that's really important. One of the thing is I think about, Jeffrey, is being I call myself a recovering programmer. So much of the time we talk about AI, but you know the thing that really annoys me about AI is AI starts to serve what it thinks you want to see.
Hmm.
But the thing is it feeds into egocentrism, in my opinion, because all of a sudden the things that it thinks that you want to see, it just brings more of the things that you want to see. It's not going to bring
Absolutely.
you new cuisine. It's not going to bring you new countries. It's not going to bring you, new thoughts. It's going to bring you the same car or the same magazine or the same thing. And I think that we really have to guard ourselves, just even in our technology, because our technology can keep us apart just as much as it can bring us together, which gets us to another word, which I found is fascinating, and that's sociocentrism. Speak a little bit to that.
Well, think about again, I mean, ecocentrism being the idea that, hey, I'm the center of all things, right? My way is the only way and it's the best way, and I won't listen to any other way, right? You're closed, and then you take that and you you multiply it up to a class of people, thinking they are better than another class of people, or a culture thinking that they have a better culture than another, right? So egocentrism is the when you go from egocentrism to sociocentrism, now it's not just about you, but now it's about your class, right? When we think
Mhm.
of racism and prejudice and some of the things that are in our news, is often because you think that your class of people are better than the next class of people, right? And that's not true, because as humans, we all have value, we all have worth, and we all have dignity, and we can bring those customs and traditions, right, and make the world a better place. And that's
you
what.
know it, mhm. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, and that's what's very fascinating about what we see so much of the time. It seems that we hear about globalism, and we hear about nationalism, and sometimes globalism is demonized, and sometimes nationalism is demonized, and sometimes one culture is demonized against the other, or some that are set up. And I think quite frankly, it's okay to be proud to be an American, or it's okay to be proud to be Catholic, or I think where we run into the problem sometimes is when even our habits don't express what our head desires. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. And we're all, Robert, I call it subject to the 4 E's, right? And that's the
Yeah.
expectations we have out of life. What are you expecting out of life? Right? And then what are your life experiences? Has your life experiences opened you up to people who don't look like you, or people who don't believe like you, or people who may not even like you, right? How has life equipped you with through your experiences? And then we have environments, the role that our environments play in our life. It's a huge component to how inclusive we can be, right? And then the role of education, not master's degrees or PhDs. We're talking about how has life taught you to be resilient? Are you resilient? Can you bounce back from adversity, or being mishandled, or being criticized, right? Or, how do you handle things like adversity, difficulty, and unforeseen circumstance? More importantly, think about this. How can you manage victory,
hmm
right?
Yeah, in victory is many things to different people, but
Mhm.
in this situation, it's the victory of the human spirit, I believe, as well. And I think it's so important, because sometimes I believe things also can become self-fulfilling, because as human beings, we also tend to sometimes gravitate towards what we know, and we seek
Mhm.
that out. and
Yes,
and that's where it's like, that's where it's like, what you're doing is training in the diversity option, is saying, if you hadn't, let's just use food, for example. If you've never been to a Thai restaurant, don't just try it once, don't just try it twice, try it a few times. And what happens, it starts to become, a filling operative or habit to say, now I'm starting to like Thai food. Now I might just go out to this a couple of more times, and then all of a sudden someone says, here's some Italian food. Because what we're trying to do is not trying to bring everyone's world and implode it. We're really trying to take everyone's world and explode it, aren't we, Jeffrey?
absolutely. Well, when you think about in-group bias, we
Mm-hmm.
all are subject to that. We all revert back to what's comfortable to us, right? It's comfortable to be in the presence of someone that looks like you. It's comfortable. That's what science says. It's not what I'm saying, right? That's
Yeah.
what science says, right? The question is, can we be inclusive and grow our circle of comfortability by including people that are different, right? In my neighborhood, Robert, growing up, um, there were no Mexicans, right? There were no Latinas, Latinos that I can remember. And when I went to Puerto Rico for the first time, they said, "Well, do you want a burrito?" And I said, "Well, what's that?"
Right.
What about a taco? I said, "Well, what's that?" Right? It was my limited experience that had not allowed me to experience, the cuisine that people would eat in Puerto Rico, or when you go to the Philippines, or when you go to any other country other than yourself. So again, bias in-group bias and the things that comes like that comes from usually a lack of experience of not being able or being connected to other people. So
And the other thing is just creating the opportunity from it, the experience of it, and using these as great stories to tell. It reminds me, coming from a Hispanic family and growing up. Jeffrey, I remember when my mom first got her professorship at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. Ames, Iowa. Ames had the only banana tree in the whole state, the indoor, and it had a banana tree. And I remember the first time we went out for a lunch, And I remember my mom asking she was wondering if someone could bring her some hot sauce. And I still remember the waitress coming back, the wait staff coming back, setting a bottle of Heinz ketchup on the table. And that was considered hot sauce. So, I mean,
Right.
but see, once you start looking past, like, well, that's not what I want in my world. But if you look at it through a different lens, it's like, wow, this is a shared experience that both parties could have and both grow from it, not become
Absolutely.
divided from it, right?
Right. Well, that's the goal of diversity, equity, inclusion, fairness, belonging, all those things is how do we make the product better? How do we make people better? How do we make the workplace better by just being inclusive? And science says, and the business case for what we're talking about is well documented. When there's a diversity of thought, when there's a diversity, behavioral diversity that you and I are going to talk about in a little bit, it makes everything better. Right. When
Hmm.
people can be included from multiple different perspectives, multiple different behavioral perspectives, everything will be better because no one part of the pie will be missing.
And another thing I found really well, because I totally agree. It can't be missing. And I think, the one word that I always think of when it comes to, business, especially business, we talk about habits. And habits can be either way. I always say habits can work for you and habits can work against you. You know what? When they work against you, it's just like, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the
Mhm.
same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what we want to change. But, you know, if you are seeking out and pursuing diversity in such a way as to grow, I mean, that's a habit that I want to keep, right?
Through neuroscience, we know that new habits can be formed in anywhere from 66 to 121 days. And,
Hmm.
some of the most interesting research I've done around, racism, prejudice, bias, and discrimination says neuroscience can now actually measure your brain, right? There's a part of your brain that lights up when in-group bias is taking place. And some sociologists and research scientists believe, Robert, that um, these habits can be broken by just continually introducing new thoughts of inclusion and diversity and equity, right? Connecting with other people who don't look like you, who don't look like you. What a fascinating thing to think about, that habit being broken. Any habit, right, that is not, conducive to being, having you be productive with your life, whatever that habit is. It's fascinating to me.
It is, and I look at pursuing diversity in the same manner that I look at exercise. If you don't pursue it on a daily basis, it gets
Yes.
lazy. But
Yes.
if you do look for the diversity that's all around you, it becomes strong. It becomes your strongest suit, and not your weakest suit. And I think that that's in many ways what neurological science is telling us is like, you become not just what you eat, right? You actually
Absolutely.
also become what you pursue. And it changes your IQ, it changes your EQ. And something that I like talking about is your CQ, your desire to pursue connections with others because it's the
Love it.
right thing to do. And that's what I call my CQ. And that's what I believe is something, because knowledge is one thing, right? Emotion's another thing, but the drive or the energy to connect is even another level that we can throw into that box. And that sometimes designates the success for some over the success of others, wouldn't you think?
Robert, well, let me go back to one thing really quickly. I want to give you a term called mirror neurons, right?
Hmm.
Mirror neurons says that you become neurons take on the characteristics of the other neurons that surround them. And think about neurons as being people. So if you're in a diverse group of people, you have diverse ideas, beliefs, and values, right? When you shut yourself off to only being again in that ego space where your way is the way or that this way is the only way, you become like that. So mirror neurons is something that is also fascinating to me. But to answer your question, Robert, about CQ, I love the idea of you, what you're creating, the idea, the intersection between connection of people and behavior. knowing who a person is and knowing how that person is going to show up. You talked about that. I know we're going to talk about that in the next segment, but I love the idea of not just EQ or behavioral awareness, but adding the idea of CQ, my friend. I think that is going to be something huge that we're going to do a lot of work together and to impact people.
Absolutely. Well, again, I am here with Jeffrey Morris. He's a master trainer, executive coach, and owner, founder of DreamSmart Academy. I know firsthand what DreamSmart Academy has. I've taken their behavioral assessment, as has my wife and our oldest son, Jeffrey. So, I mean, we're all getting to learn who we are. You know, I said this in one of the trainings before we go. I've said, you know, even a toaster oven comes with, you know, operating instructions. Why can't humans too? And I think that you're starting to establish some operating instructions for us humans.
I love that idea when you said that the other day. A toast oven comes with instructions. Powerful, my friend. I'm looking forward to the next segment.
All right. See you in the next segment. Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
All right. Again, I am here with Jeffrey Morris, my good friend. Oh my goodness. I kid you not, you know, if they can have love at first sight, you know what, they can also have friend at first sight, right?
Absolutely.
so that's what I was talking about. And, you know, and at the end of the last section, you know, I really thought about what we were talking about and we're thinking about. And, you know, one of the things I've always felt is like when a baby comes into this world, you know, there is no instruction manual. But as we grow up and we grow through this world, there's still not an instruction manual. And we can look out there and we can believe what is told about us. We can see that mirror, but sometimes the mirror isn't as clear as we want it to be. We can also be inside our own self, and we can actually even lie to ourselves on who we think we are. And, you know, and that's what I find it's so attractive to actually taking this behavioral assessment test, because it's not looking at things as if they were, or I wish they were. It actually looks at things as they are. And that's what's beautiful about this test. So please tell us a little bit about what it is that you're extracting when someone takes this behavioral assessment test.
Robert, the person that we have to defeat every day, our biggest enemy, is a person that stares back, you know, across from the mirror that we had looking every day, right? We're our own worst enemy at times. So the DreamSmart Academy's behavioral superpowers exercise is one that is validated by more than 30 years of behavioral research, and is validated in 125 countries, and is validated in 11 languages. So at the essence of what we want to do at the Academy is answer one of life's most pondered questions. And that's the question of, who am I? Mm-hmm. Right. And I talk about, and I say, if you can't answer with absolute clarity, conviction, and confidence the question of who am I, you have some work to do. And if you like the person you are, great. We can build on whatever that is that you've done for as a set forth as a foundation. And if you can't answer that question, we can help you build that too. But at the heart of the science at which we talk about, we coach, train, and mentor, is really answering the question of, what is my behavioral identity, right? What are my unique gifts and talents now that I know this behavioral identity? What's my value that I bring to the world? Then how do I unleash that upon the world to show and really explain my purpose now that I know the answer to these other questions here? And I think that you got excited when you saw your result as a facilitator, your wife, Sean, as a strategist. And what was your son's, what was his behavioral identity?
Critical thinker.
Critical thinking, reflect. So he's one of me. He's a reflective thinker. Then he's in my family of our behavioral powers identities.
You know, and it's really important to discover who I am, because I think, Jeffrey, what it does is when you really look and you see, you know, I was in a mastermind group, and the question was, this billionaire person was in the room, and the
Hmm.
question was, was asked is, why was he more successful than everyone else in the room?
Hmm.
Okay. And then he was like, and the answer was, is because he knows himself best. And he
Wow.
says, as an entrepreneur, by knowing myself best, I know what I do better than any other person in the world. And I also know what I do worse than every other person in the world. And the thing is I do what I do best, and I'll continue to do that, and sharpen my skills, and I have the pursuit of what I do well. And those that
Hmm.
I don't, I find the best, the most excellent people in the world that fill the roles. Because I think what he told us is after I know who I am, then I can ask, what do I bring to the world?
Right.
And that's the amazing question, because once you internalize who I am, then all of a sudden it's time to go out to connect, because that's when the magic happens. Is when I know myself best, I can
Hmm.
connect best with others on both their level and my level. Wouldn't you agree?
We have a statement at the DreamSmart Academy, and the statement is, know who you are,
Hmm.
be who you are, but do what you are. Right. Once we answer the question, as we said, of who am I, and the next question will be, well, based on this identity, based on these behavior superpowers, what are my unique gifts, talents, and abilities? And once you know that, it's about partnering with the right people to help you unleash those gifts, talents, and abilities, and really just to help you get your message out, your purpose, and your values out. And that's kind of what you and I are doing together with this call, and what we'll do together as we start connecting people through their behavioral awareness, their social emotional intelligence, and now starting to connect that through the art of connecting with people, like bridging that chasm together. It's going to be impactful.
It's going to be really, really impactful. And the other things that I see impactful are, at DreamStart Academy, you know, you know, you're you're bridging people together both at the macro level, because really there's a group dynamic, and at the micro level, the
Yeah.
individual and personal, development level. But
Yes.
here are the other things that I've also found fascinating is, you know, you talk about the neurons, and you talk about how we mirror, but see, this mirror also extends to, the children that come from behind us, because they're also being able to be entrained in the same, psychological, emotional, and thought space that we are. And then all of a sudden, I think what they do is they get to be in the proper place of creating a whole new blueprint that society starts to see. I mean, that's a part of the
Absolutely.
goal here, isn't it?
Some of my most impactful work is working with marginalized youth, disconnected youth,
Hmm.
opportunity youth, whatever you call them, right? It's youth that don't come from necessarily homes that have two parents, right? They could be a mom or a dad or a grandmother, whoever that immediate part of the ecosystem is. And oftentimes, Robert, they're not given good computer code. You're a computer programmer, right? Good code in, good code comes back out. Bad code in, bad code comes back out. And what we see a lot in these cases, not only with youth, but with adults that have bad code, is we're going to replace that bad code with this behavioral identity. We're going to tell you what your behavior superpowers are. We're going to expose that, right? We're going to help you grow and walk in that. And then you'll find yourself being able to connect, to impact, to have a life of significance. But more importantly, Robert, you can be a person of authenticity, right?
Yeah.
That's what's most important to me. Showing
Well,
up. I'm
well,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna take that one up on you here. I got to do this because, I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
I say this in my training. I said, "There's nothing better than being authentic, unless you're an asshole." So I think I think you know. So I guess part of what I'm doing is I'm looking at this as, being holistic in your approach to being authentic, and that is,
Absolutely.
and I think that that's what's the difference is, you know what you're doing is it's like sometimes in life we need to have a restart, we need to have a reset, and it allows us to redo. And part of the DreamStart Academy is taking, you know, what you have at this point in time, allowing you to sit down and look at it. And I call it, like, you know, kind of guiding the blind spots. It's like taking information and filling, you know, these areas so you can be more equipped to, you know, pursue diversity, you know, which as an entrepreneur at this point in time, if you're not pursuing diversity and you're shutting yourself out, even with micro directed thoughts, I mean, you're really keeping yourself from the success that's intended for you. You know, and this isn't just race, this isn't just religion, this is even having the courage to step in a room where you think yourself that that room is better than you, and all of a sudden you sit in the car and then you go back home. I mean, it is cross the board in every single way, isn't this, Jeffrey?
Absolutely. Showing up. Um, the world every day is constantly trying to dictate who they want you to be, right? And I always say, in a world that's constantly trying to change you, the most important thing you can do is answer the question of who am I,
Hmm.
right? And be set in that, right? Not to a point where you can't learn, but understand when you have the stake in the ground of my behavioral identity, it just helps you set direction for your life. It really gives you a place to say, hey, here's what I will allow in my life and what I will not allow in my life. It just sets the foundation for so many things when you can answer that question. As an entrepreneur, think about um, the importance of knowing your identity, my identity as a reflective thinker. I'm going to bring research and data and analysis, but I'm going to need more behavior diversity if my product's going to get off the ground. I'm going to need someone who is an influencer who can take what I do and give it to a person that has a mouthpiece. Or for instance, for someone like yourself who's a facilitator. Robert, you have the rarest of all of the behavioral identities. Out of the millions of people that have completed this profile, only 4% of people in the world have the facilitator's identity. Facilitators have they have an uncanny way. Their superpower is being able to connect people and their feelings, but also being able to get the job done. It's the rarest of all, but you can balance all of those things, the feelings of others, and get the job done and make it fun in the process. Right? Your son, who's like me, like, we're gonna bring the data and the research, but you're gonna make it stable for people. A Kenyatta Turner, who you know is the influencer for the DreamSmart Academy, I give her the voice and she just goes and runs away with it and she's influencing people. So diversity in everything that we're talking about makes a huge difference.
Tell me this, because I agree. Diversity makes it all difference. And see, what I love about this is you're actually getting it down really, really on the internal metric of what people operate.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Martin Luther King. We're not judging ourselves on the outward appearance. We're actually judging ourselves on our character appearance.
Yes.
And you know what? And every character has the gift of who we are. And
Yes.
and and that is, in many ways, I feel, the missing instruction manual of what human beings have to offer and who we are, isn't it?
Self-awareness is one of the most critical tools needed for any type of life of authenticity or any type of transformative life. Authenticity is the key to that. And so what we're giving people is, even beyond their behavioral identity, Robert, we're giving them the idea, we're giving a subset of their behavioral identity, which is communication preferences, their financial temperament, their entrepreneurial style. There's so many things that come out of just one 10-minute discovery that's impactful, that can really, these insights that we're going to give, anyone can be gleaned for a lifetime of growth, of transformation, and authentic growth there. So good stuff there. I think you may have frozen. Oh,
Hey, I am back. I apologize about that. something was happening there. We're connected again, you know, and and I was I didn't get to hear your last part, and really what I was talking about is the fulfillment, like us as an instruction manual of who we are. And by knowing ourselves best and have an assessment like this, you also teach and train. So tell us a little bit about the coaching and training that you do, because just having the assessment is not enough. It's actually being able to interpret it and put a plan in action. So tell us a little bit about that, Jeff.
Robert, from that assessment, we look at subsets of behavior, communication, entrepreneurial style, your financial temperament. And so again, you call it a cheat code of sorts, right? And I've already said, maybe I think when you were frozen, that the best gift we can give ourselves is the gift of self-awareness, right? The more self-aware we are, the more confident we can be as a person, which means we can be more inclusive of other ideas that are different than ours, right? And that's essentially what our training does. It helps you broaden a sense of who you are, gives you some really insight into the macro level of who you are, right? We're decoding that behavior that is hard to measure unless you have an assessment like this. So like you said, from the macro to the micro, being able to include all of that in our training, and it's working. It's having an impact around the world for the youngest in our society. Robert, as you know, we're starting a charter school with this as a foundation, our behavioral training and education as a foundation. And whether we're working with GEDs or PhDs, the training remains the same. We're giving you, any person that goes through our training, a sense of greater awareness, more self-confidence, and it just helps every part of their life, no matter what they're doing.
Well, Jeffrey, I just want to thank you so much for being on the iNetrepreneur Radio Network today. What I have your contact information scrolling across the screen. Are there other ways that people can connect with you? And I think you have a special offer for those that are watching today. So tell us a little bit about both. How can we get a hold of you, and how can we take advantage of that special offer?
Well, Robert, I'm an old school dude. My cell phone number is right below. So I don't hide my cell phone number from anybody. It's my personal cell. If you call me, if I don't pick up right away, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But the offer I have, Robert, is for those who are listening to our programming today. I'd like to offer them an opportunity to complete this behavior superpowers assessment. So if anyone, shoots me an email or text me on the phone, hey, I'm trying to connect with you. I belong to the iNetrepreneur network. I'll send them a link and they can complete their profile, my friend, and we can go from there. But I want to do that especially for those who are in your network, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. I am putting this in the chat as well. What Jeff says is just text him, text Jeff at 760-415-1071. He will offer you the same assessment that my wife, one of my sons, and I myself have taken. I mean, what an amazing assessment. I learned so much. And what's really great about it is I'm holding it up right here. This is on my wife's. I don't think you can read it, so I hope it's okay, honey, wherever you're at. But it really is a one-page white sheet of you, and I challenge anyone, in the softest of challenges, to go out and take it, and see who you are. And if this resonates with you, please, text Jeff as well and see if you can't get a one-on-one connection with him. But Jeff, I am so excited that you are here today, fellow Marine. Hoorah! And
hoorah, Marine!
hoorah! And please reach out to them. He's also going to be at our book launch, in which we call our book premiere, coming up on January 27th, talking a little bit more about the superpowers training and what he's offer, and another opportunity to meet him in Zoom and get to know a little bit more about his world. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show today. You're a rock star, and I'm glad I was just able to spend it with you, my friend.
Robin, I'm honored, my friend, and I'm inspired, man. So glad to be a part of the network and part of the family, my friend. Looking forward to future things with us.
Absolutely. Again, I have been with Jeffrey Morris. He is the CEO and founder of the DreamSmart Academy, a wonderful academy. They're actually going to be, I believe, bringing a charter school here to the Phoenix area. So I am so happy to help with bringing the foundation of a new way of understanding of oneself in a way that we can have that new blueprint or manual for growth. Again, my name is Robert Jones, owner, founder of the iNetrepreneur Network. You have places to be, but you spent this time with us, and I want to thank you for it. We're here each week from 2:30 to 3:30 Mountain Standard Time. Look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week. Thank you, everyone.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network, with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.